Hey, Keto Freaks, this is Carl Franklin.
And Richard Morris.
And we have an interesting offer for you.
Sure.
We're going to start doing CPM-based advertising.
Yeah, that's cost per thousand.
Yeah, so you can essentially send us your ad, and if we like what you're selling...
Yeah, that's necessary.
Yeah, you can say, I want to buy 2,000 deliveries of this ad.
Yeah.
So that means you can control your costs right up front. There's no outrageous costs.
Yeah, and we can do audio advertising on the podcast. We can do advertising on our YouTube channel. We can do banner advertising on the ketogenic forums and on our blog targeted to ketogenic people. And we can even geographically target your ad.
That's right. Over 72% of our listeners are in the United States. About 10% are in Australia. About 5% in Canada. So if you have products that only exist in those countries, then you can target them only there.
Well, where should we go for more information?
For more information on how to advertise in 2 Keto Dudes, go to sponsor.2keto.com. Hey, welcome back to 2 Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. And in February of 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia, and I've been on a ketogenic diet for almost 3 years. When I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. And within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared. I've also lost about 80 pounds, and I've completely turned my health around.
And this show is a document of my progress through ketosis and Richard's experience thriving for years in ketosis.
Yeah.
And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
Nah.
We have done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind them. We hope to share some of that research. Where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
And you'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies. We love to cook and we love to eat.
Oh, yeah.
And every episode, we both share a keto recipe that cannot be ignored.
Cannot.
No. So, Richard, let's start podcast number 54, The TOFI Show.
So what does TOFI mean, Carl?
TOFI means thin on the outside, fat on the inside, which is a condition that many people find themselves in. They are lean or not overweight or not obese, but yet they have all the metabolic syndrome problems that everybody else has.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that in a minute. First, do we have any corrections or apologies from last week?
Yeah, we've actually got one. This is from Fiorella, one of our most prolific recipe writers in the ketogenic forums.
Yeah.
And Fiorella says, I think there may be an error in describing Pecorino Romano cheese on the show. As the name suggests, it's a cheese that's been consumed all the way back to ancient Roman times. It's a common staple of legionnaires.
Right.
And it's produced in the Lazio region where the capital city Rome resides. That's really where the name Romano comes from, Rome. The name is, in fact, protected, and Pecorino Romano is only made in certain areas. It's made out of sheep's milk, ergo the name Pecorino. In Pecorino Romano, the Italian word for sheep is pecora. So that's where the name comes from. It's basically sheep's milk from Rome. Now, I think I mentioned it comes from the south, and that's because I know a Sicilian who tells me that the best Romano cheese comes from Sicily. Well, typical Sicilians.
Yeah, right.
But Fiorella goes on to say that perhaps the second most famous Pecorino cheese, that is sheep's milk cheese, is made in Tuscany, but it's not as salty or pungent as the Romano. generally milder and eaten as slices, where Pecorino Romano is often grated and shredded and added to dishes. So a little bit like Parmesan. Fiorella says, while Pecorino Romano resides in the Parmesan category in American grocery stores, it's not made of cow's milk, as the famous Parmigiano Reggiano is. So that's our errata for the show.
And just to reiterate, I love Pecorino Romano cheese. It's you can use it like salt because it's so salty and it's meaty. It has that meaty flavor.
Absolutely.
I make my keto breadcrumbs with it when I make chicken parm.
Nice.
So let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is. Yeah. A ketogenic diet is any diet that puts you into a state of nutritional ketosis where you're actually burning fat for fuel, and a byproduct of that is ketones, and using fatty acids for fuel as well. And you can get there a number of ways, but a surefire way is what we follow. We eat 20 grams or less of carbohydrates per day.
Yep.
And those usually come from green leafy vegetables or nuts or dairy products, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we eat just as much protein as we should be eating, whether we're doing keto or not, which is about 1 to 1.5 grams of protein for every kilogram of lean body mass you have.
Sure.
And as we've heard a number of times, there are a lot of people doing less than that and getting really good results with lower insulin. But we stick to that anyway, as a general rule. And then the rest of your calories and all of your fuel comes from fat, whether that's fat on your plate or the fat from that Krispy Kreme you ate a decade ago.
Krispy Kreme.
Krispy Kreme. Got to do a keto Krispy Kreme. Somebody's got to come up with a keto donut.
I think if we ask Fiorella, we'll get a recipe.
She might have one, yeah. So, Richard, how was your week?
It was pretty good, actually. I've had the results of 2 experiments come in. As you probably know, for the past 2 months, I've been eating the Australian nutrient reference value for protein every day, which is 0.84 grams per kilogram of lean body mass, which, as you probably realise, is a lot less than I've been eating for the past year. For the past year, I've been between 1 and 1.5 grams per kilogram. Right. But I wanted to see whether the Australian reference values would result in me gaining or losing lean body mass if I limited myself to that for the 2 months. So I've got the results. I did a DEXA scan at the beginning and I did a DEXA scan at the end. Now, part of this is confounded by the fact that my knee blew up halfway through this. Right. So I've not been on my bike doing my long bike rides, and when I do my short bike rides, I've been using my right leg for most of the pedaling, and the left leg is just a passenger. And so the DEXA scan actually shows, well, I guess the headline value is that I lost an insignificant amount of lean mass. I lost about 38 grams of lean mass over the 60 days, and that is in a body with a total mass of 80,380 grams. So it's really just a sampling error. But the interesting thing is that a DEXA scan will actually give you the lean mass and fat mass for each segment of your body. And this is a computer program that they use to read the scan information and basically slice you up into bits and work out how much lean mass is in each bit and how much fat is in each bit. Now, the interesting thing about my results is that when I looked at the actual scan, my left arm is only half on the scan. And when I look at the DEXA results show that my right arm increased in size by 1.6 kilograms, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And my left leg, which is the leg that the knee blew up on, which you'd expect to have atrophied a little bit, according to the DEXA results, it atrophied by 1.4 kilograms. So those numbers don't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to talk to my doctor when I get back from the States.
How did your arm not show up on the DEXA?
Well, you can actually see the scan. When they do the scan, you can actually see your skeleton sitting on the bed.
Oh, I see.
And in mine, you can actually see that my left arm is actually half on the
it's out of range
area. Yeah, so the operator didn't properly calibrate it for me when I was on the device.
Yuck.
So it's a bad measurement, and there's some weird numbers in it. For example, my right leg went from 9% body fat to 4% body fat, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. That's the good leg that's been doing the extra work. There's no way that leg is 4% body fat. It's more like 9 to 10%. That's probably more appropriate. So, so I need to talk to the doctor about it. But the bottom line results is that I certainly didn't lose any lean mass by eating 67 grams of protein per day, which is what 0.84 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass is for me. So I'm fairly confident that I can, if I need to go as low as that, it's not going to cause damage to me. And I know from having done that for the past 2 months, whenever I got close to not hitting 67 grams of protein a day, I got an urge to eat something savory.
Yeah.
So I'm able to dial in on that now, and I think I've got a fairly good benchmark for what my protein requirements are.
That's great.
Yeah. The other thing that happened was that as you know, about 4 months ago, I resumed metformin. I went off metformin for 4 months prior to that because I wanted to make sure that my glucose was in control without any drugs at all. And it was, but my insulin sort of shot up. It went up from 13.7, which is where it was, up to 19.8. Well, 4 months ago, I started metformin again, and I've got my latest insulin result, and it actually shows that I'm back to 13.7. So I think we could probably say that metformin is able to keep my basal insulin low by a fair amount. It's basically keeping me in the physiological range. So
it's helping.
The only other... Yeah, it is helping, and I think that I'm going to probably be on metformin for the rest of my life. So the other interesting thing is my HbA1c went up slightly from 5.2 to 5.3. Now, it's been 5.2 for 3 years now, so I'm not quite sure why that's gone up. I think part of my problem is that I've done too many things this month, and I might have confounded myself by doing the protein experiment and this at the same time.
Interesting.
But anyway, the good news is that my fasting insulin has come back down to just the top of the physiological range. And my knee is getting better in that my tendinitis is gone. They stick needles in the muscle, and that basically releases the muscle to enable the tendon to relax. And
that's sort of an acupuncture technique, right?
It is. It's actually called dry needling, and it's extremely effective. I generally don't believe in acupuncture, but this process has really made a major improvement in my knee, and I intend to go skiing on it.
All right. That's right. We're going to be in Breckenridge at the Low Carb Conference as people are listening to this show.
And I'm getting ready to go now. I'm flying out on Monday, and we are having an open house on Thursday just after the mixer. So if you come and grab Carl or I at the mixer, which is at the Village Hotel between 6 and 8, come and grab us, and we'll give you an invite and tell you where we have a chalet with 18 rooms or something ridiculous.
Something ridiculous, yeah. Party house.
It's the party house,
yeah.
And I'm bringing beer. I'm bringing some zero carbohydrate Big Head beer. So.
Fantastic.
So that was my week. How was yours, Carl?
Really, really good. My infection is gone. Yay!
Yay!
And I was a little concerned because I had a cellulitis, of course, because it's an infection in my hand, and it sort of bothered the skin. And talk to my doctor. You can, if you look at both my hands together, this hand, my right hand, is redder than the left hand.
Yeah,
you can still see it. And I was concerned because this being my last day of doxycycline, I was concerned that, the infection is still harboring and hiding in there and it's going to come back. Yeah. She told me that, no, it probably won't, but there are still residual effects of the cellulitis, even though the infection is gone. Right. So you're still going to see an outline of the redness where it was red. You're going to see the skin cells are bigger, which you can definitely tell that they are bigger, and still kind of, just the hand is healing even though the infection is gone. So that's what I'm hoping. But we're going to find out in Breckenridge if the infection was resistant to the antibiotics and some of those resistant strains stuck around.
Yeah.
That's going to be a bummer for me. But
Yeah.
she tells me that the odds are in my favor that it's all gone.
Awesome.
So the other thing, as I mentioned last week, is that I'm doing Dave Feldman's cholesterol hack. And if you remember show 38, Hacking Cholesterol with Dave Feldman, he talked about this protocol that he's developed, whereby you spend a certain number of days. You have to be ketogenic, right? Yeah. So you have to be eating ketogenic beforehand, but you eat the ketogenic macros, but a smaller calorie portion for a number of days. And he was doing it at 750 calories, but he says it really doesn't matter, if you're 1,000 calories or whatever, so long as it's consistent from day to day.
Sure.
And you do that for a number of days, reduce calorie.
I think it was 5 days, wasn't it?
Well, he did it for 5 days, but he's got a bunch of different options. I'm doing it for 3 days.
Okay, cool.
And you take a blood test at the beginning, you take another blood test at the end of the low calorie days, and then you do the same number of days, but high calorie ketogenic, 5,000 calories.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I'm just the man for the job. I ate more food yesterday than I think I've ever eaten in my life in a single day.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. 2 bags of macadamia nuts. That was like 143 grams of macadamia nuts in each bag, about 1,000 calories per bag. I had 2 of those. I had like a half a brie, a bunch of pepperoni. I had about a half a kilo cooked ribeye.
Now we're talking.
With 2 tablespoons of butter on it.
So you've been living good.
Well, yesterday I did, and today I'm going to continue this for 2 days.
You make out the arrears today.
But just to reiterate what Dave said in that show, the idea is that he predicts, and he's had 100% success with this, that after these 3 days, my cholesterol, my LDL cholesterol is going to plummet. Right. My HDL is going to go up. And my triglycerides are going to come down. In other words, everything moving in the direction that the experts agree.
A cardiologist will want them to go in.
Yeah, exactly. And so that sort of flies in the face of conventional wisdom about cholesterol. But I strongly urge that if you're interested in that, listen to Hacking Cholesterol with Dave Feldman, which was published in October on Halloween, actually last year. Yeah. And it's episode 38. And I'm documenting this whole process with video. So there will be a YouTube video, hopefully next week, maybe the week after, about the whole entire process, including all my results and everything else.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I actually did his protocol, but only the hypochloric version of it before my last tests, and my results all went in the direction that Dave predicted they would. My doctor, when she saw those results and I told her what I was doing, said to me, "Can you do me a favor and next time not do that so that I can make sure that I'm not seeing an artifact?" So the last time I did my blood test, which was just last Monday, I didn't do Dave Feldman's trick, and we're going to see if my results, I should probably get them sometime next week. We should see if my results go back to their normal, and that will be interesting.
Yeah, I know. What is the doctor going to do? It's really, I mean, this is new information. How do you have to change what you think is right and real.
One of the interesting theories Dave has is that people who are getting a blood test try to be really good by eating a small amount of calories prior to doing their test for a couple of days beforehand to hopefully get good results. And what they end up doing is they end up getting bad results. So
it is interesting. He tells me that doctors think they can just put a yardstick out in the pond, and measure it, and then it doesn't change. But it's more like putting a ladder in the ocean. It's dynamic and it changes depending on what you eat. All right. Well, that's enough of that. You'll hear more from Richard and I about the ongoing saga of our nutritional life next week. But now it's time to read some mail.
So we've got a couple of interesting mails that came through the ketogenic forums. Brenda posted an interesting topic in the newbies group called "There is no keto rulebook."
That's great.
And this basically stems from the fact that when we were on Facebook and we were running our keto group for so long, we had a lot of people who are food purists. Now, there's nothing wrong with clean eating and all of the these movements to just eat real food and for the most part we pretty much just eat real food ourselves. But there's a lot of people in the groups that would, as soon as somebody would describe a meal that they ate that had a small amount of wheat protein in it, for example, or soy, people would say, "Oh, that soy isn't keto."
That's not keto.
Yeah, wheat gluten isn't keto, or what have you.
I used to eat Mahler's low carb bread sandwiches. In fact, I did during my low calorie phase for a cheeseburger, and people told me, "Oh, that's not keto because it's wheat."
So Brenda writes, "Here's a tip: don't get too dogmatic about anything. That's a recipe for disaster. If you want to adopt this as a permanent lifestyle, it's important to relax and keep it simple. There's no one true way to be on a ketogenic diet. There are no rules or rule book. The only criteria is to remain in a state of ketosis. If you get bullied or chastised for eating a small, very low-carb Joseph's pita because it has grains, or if pearl clutches come out of the woodwork because you ate an artificial sweetener, if somebody jumps down your throat because you tossed some carrot shavings on your salad or ate peanut butter, remember, that's their problem, not yours. There are elitists who believe that their chosen way of the ketogenic diet is the only true path. They're wrong. It's their path, not yours, which is why you'll see a lot of us more sensible old-time ketopians encourage N=1, which is a personal experiment. That means that you are an experiment of one. All of our bodies are very different. Try things out and find out what works for you. You don't need to justify your choices. If it works for you, it needs to be respected. And you may cross paths with somebody who will attempt to shame you or insult you by saying that you are a dirty keto or that you do not practice true keto. They may state that you practice IIFYM, which is if it fits your macros keto, in an attempt to try and make themselves feel superior. Some will judge you for occasionally making keto sweets or low-carb alternative recipes. Seriously, screw them.
Yeah.
They aren't going to succeed long-term. They need to focus on themselves, not judge others.
Well, they may succeed or they may not, but that doesn't give them the right to tell you what to do.
Yeah, but judging somebody else doesn't help your own case.
Doesn't.
Folks will get all up in your business and tell you that you're eating too much or too little protein, too much or too little fat, yada, yada, yada. My point is, no one knows what you need but you. Yes, you can use 20 net grams of carbohydrate as a starting point. That almost guarantees ketosis. And you can use an online calculator to approximate lean body mass in order to calculate protein. But again, that's only a starting point. Fat and protein are pretty flexible so that you can figure out what's best for you. Let me repeat, there is no one true way of the ketogenic diet. No rules, no rule book, only general, flexible, suggested guidelines.
Amen.
The cruel reality, if you are here to lose weight, you'll gain it all back the moment you go back to the standard American high-carb diet. Keto is not temporary or a quick fix. It's a way of living, takes patience and time, read and research. And if you are here to reverse your type 2 diabetes, know that it can be done. I am living proof, says Brenda.
Yeah.
And I did it without following some fool's imaginary ketogenic diet rulebook. My story is episode 21 at 2ketotudes.com. Good luck. I've been ketogenic 3 years and I'm not going anywhere. I got you back.
Yeah, Brenda. Yeah. She's living proof. You're living proof. I'm living proof. Our guests are living proof. Our admins are living proof. My friend, Les, who I told you about, bass player who has been on insulin for a long time and was really overweight and just miserable. He went on a ketogenic diet in October. He just told me yesterday that he is completely off insulin.
Oh, wow.
And his 30-day blood glucose average is 104.
Wow.
So he's essentially non-diabetic.
So he was down to half insulin, wasn't he, in January?
Yeah.
So he's now totally off it. That's
he
awesome.
took long-acting and fast-acting both. And he just went keto and I said, you want to come on the show as a guest? He said, what's to say? Eat bacon and eggs and rock on.
You can come on and play some music.
Yeah, but I just, it's not that it can be done. It is being done.
Being done, yeah.
All the time.
Absolutely.
All right, here's another one from our community forum. Mm-hmm. This is Brenda and Donna's 30-day steak challenge. As an experiment to further disprove the notion of calories in, calories out, and that a lack of carbohydrate will result in death and ultimately weight gain. In other words, conventional BS. Mm-hmm. The indomitable Brenda Zorn and myself, and this is Donna Lordy, who was on our show just a while ago. Brenda Zorn and myself are going to start a 30-day steak challenge at the end of February. The rules. Number 1, you must eat only steak for 30 days. 2, water and coffee only, preferably. I will send one cute brain sticker to successful challenge participants.
Nice.
Simple enough? Yes. Comrades, feel free to join us in our grand venture. We will probably blog and maybe record some hijinks on our own regarding the experiment.
That's awesome.
I think this is awesome.
That's an N of 2.
Yeah.
And anyone else who shows up.
And there's a couple of people who are doing it with him.
Yeah.
And why not?
Yeah, why not? I know that Brenda has just completed 240 hours of fasting.
Wow.
Water fast. 10 days. She was going for my record. I did this, I think it was probably September or October. I did 10 days of fast. Exactly 240 hours. She wanted to know exactly how much I had done so that she didn't want to beat me or fall short of the mark. She wanted to hit it and nail it, and she did. So good on her. I'm actually fasting right now because I'm about to fly overseas and I don't trust Qantas food.
Yeah, right.
So I'm fasting. I intend to sneer at it.
You won't be fasting in Breckenridge, though. We're going to be eating high on the hog.
Oh, no. Well, I'm going to be cooking. I'm going to be eating. I'm going to be skiing.
Well, I already gained a pound yesterday, so and then in Breckenridge, I'm going to be eating a lot. But as soon as we get back, I'll start cutting calories again, which is, obviously that works. By the way, during my low calorie phase, I lost 2 pounds a day.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, and I put on 1 in the first day back. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to our guest, the content of this show.
They've been sitting patiently listening to us blither on like idiots.
Right. Richard and I would like to welcome Matt Murray and Teresa Lance. Matt, introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Matt. I'm a admin on the group. Skinny, and I have diabetes. It's so exciting.
Yeah, you and Peter Ataya and Terry are all in that same category. Interesting. Yeah. Terry, introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Terry, and I have been type 2 diabetic and currently on a thinner side, so can relate with what Matt said.
Yeah, you both look great. I just got to say, and it's not just like your lack of obesity and, your thinness, but body tone, skin tone, you guys look great.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're the best looking diabetics I've ever seen.
Well, thank you.
Certainly better looking than Richard and I. What is it about TOFIs that gets everybody so worked up? Why is it that people who are in this state think that they're okay? And why is it that it just bugs us big guys that, when these thin people have metabolic syndrome? Because you don't know unless you're intimate with their blood work.
Well, for me, I never considered myself overweight. I had a bit of a belly. I was at my heaviest. I got to 204. I'm about 6 feet tall. So, when I found out I had diabetes, and that was in August, I guess, my numbers had bounced around. My average blood sugar was like in the 130s, but my doctor would always say, you're fine. You're skinny. There's no way that you can have diabetes. But my blood work said it did. And I just, not knowing, I let it go. And I worked with a guy whose brother was a diabetic, and that was he mentioned A1C. It was the first time I had heard that, and I'd never had one done. My doctor had never had one done. So I kind of didn't go to a doctor for a few years. Then in 2016, I said, I'm going to take better care of myself. Went in and found out I was 172. My A1C was 7.4.
Oh boy.
They had a checklist of things you go through, high blood pressure check, high LDL check, low HDL check, trigs were high. My glucose was high. I had a history of smoking. I'd quit some time ago when my children were born. But basically on the list of things that were going to kill you, I had all of them but one. But I was skinny and everyone thought I was fit. So it kind of wrecked my worldview of how I was taking care of myself.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't anywhere to turn because the doctors put me on the standard, eat 30, 60 grams of carbs a meal.
Yeah.
Eat your healthy grains. And I did all that because I didn't know any better. And nothing was changing. And then I had a friend who was keto just because he found it interesting. So I started that. And then I found you guys in August. The Angry as Hell episode was the first one I heard. And I kind of knew that's where I was supposed to go. Did that. Got my blood test back. My sugar was down. My A1C was down to 5.9.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't been to the doctors. That's on me. But I have a meter that keeps a history, and my 90-day history is 95 now. My blood sugar's at 95, average over 90 days. So I think next time I get my A1C, it will be better too.
Sure.
But even now, when I go out to a restaurant and I eat like this, people don't understand it, and I say, well, I'm diabetic. I can't have the sweet sauce on the food and all that, and they say there's no way you could be diabetic. Diabetic is for overweight and obese people. Right. And I don't know. People don't talk about diabetes maybe, but people are always stunned. And I look at a lot of people, and I can see their body type was just like mine, is just like mine was. And you kind of want to go up and go, I think you're in trouble, but you don't know it. And you guys talk about it all the time. How many people are not diagnosed, and so. I went a lot longer than I thought to, but that's my story. So yeah, I'm skinny. I was diabetic. I don't know what we're calling ourselves. I don't know my insulin level. I still consider that I'm IR, but I've got everything pretty well managed. All my numbers are better, and it's all because of keto. So
yeah.
I'm hoping that people will hear this and listen, and maybe there's some overweight people who have skinny friends that would never listen to this show, and they can say, wait a minute. My friend sounds like Matt. Maybe I should tell them, go get checked because just because you're skinny. Checked. Oh, that's how I started. It was 170 over 110. Yeah. I got that, and I completely panicked, and that was what started me onto this path of getting healthy was my extremely high blood pressure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good start. But I think a lot of people that are skinny or thinner don't recognize how much risk they're putting themselves at. And it is bad. I was bad. Now I'm good. And it's not hard to do at all to fix things.
It's delicious.
Yes, it is very delicious. So sorry, I talked too long, but Terry, now it's your turn.
Yeah. Terry, let's hear your story.
First, kind of going back to your question, Carl, I think that in our culture, there's such a stereotype of a certain degree of being overweight or obesity must mean health problems. And so we look at someone with a certain degree of obesity and assume I should check for diabetes. They're probably diabetic. And so I think that if you haven't kind of reached that threshold of obesity or being overweight, I think people just don't assume it. They just assume you're fine. In my case, I was overweight at the time that I was diagnosed, but I guess not to the point where that was a go-to for my doctor. So I was diagnosed in 2002, so 14 and a half years ago. And when I was diagnosed, it wasn't because I was having other health problems, really. And the doctor didn't think to check for diabetes. I actually asked her to check for diabetes. I was having recurrent yeast infections, which I knew could be connected.
Sure.
So I asked to check for that. So when I was diagnosed, my HbA1c was somewhere over 12.0. I don't remember the number.
Wow, indeed.
My blood sugar was 318.
Wow.
So it was pretty bad. And at that time, I was 33.
And what's your height? What was your height and weight at that time?
I'm 5'4". I don't know my weight. I would say probably around 175.
Yeah.
Somewhere. So I was overweight. But I think, somehow just wasn't at that threshold where she assumed we better be checking for these things.
Right.
Right.
So since then, been on a multitude of different medications. I've been a bad patient. I went for periods of time without going to the doctor, didn't have tests done, would stop taking medications. So I am definitely not the model diabetic patient.
You're actually a healthcare professional too, aren't you?
I'm a psychologist. Yes. I was in grad school at the time that I was diagnosed. And so there were periods of I didn't have health insurance, didn't have money. And so I really did effectively. And I didn't make any changes with how I ate and very little change around exercise.
It'd be difficult if you weren't overweight because that's an obvious intervention that you can make. If you're told that your glucose is bad and you could be diabetic, you could say, well, I'm going to go on a diet and lose some weight. But if you're not overweight significantly, it's not an obvious intervention to make to change your diet.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't one really that my doctor at that time suggested. I know a lot of people hear that, like, well, go wait and this will improve. I don't think I was really encouraged that, but I was schooled in the 75 carbs per meal and 200 and some per day. So obviously I stayed pretty sick for quite a while.
So what's your HbA1c now?
Well, my HbA1c at the end of January was 5.3.
Wow. Well done. Wow.
Thank you. And at the time when I was in and out of treatment and things, I think that the best A1C that I had during that time was probably somewhere around 7 to 7.5. And my doctors were fine with that. They were happy, just, monitored my dosage and whether they need to add any other medications, but they were kind of happy to keep me right there.
It's really strange, isn't it?
It's insane.
The standard of care is to medicate somebody to 7.5 because if you medicate them to 5.5, then there's a chance that you can over-medicate them and they go hypoglycemic and fall into a coma and die. So
these doctors have never heard of gluconeogenesis.
Right.
They don't know that the liver's got a backup plan.
That's true. But if they're giving you drugs that is going to inhibit that, then, that they could literally medicate you into a very dangerous state. So that's why they aim for 7.5. But the thing is, for every 1% point of HbA1c, your chance of all of the diabetic complications increases by 22%. So and a chance of a your risk of cardiovascular disease increases by 37%. So the difference between somebody who has got an HbA1c of 5.5 and somebody who is medicated to 7.5 and quote, on the plan is significant. Literally they're medicating us to a much higher risk.
You say that on a lot of shows, Richard, and I think that's one of the most important things. The percent change with your HbA1c is 7.5 is not good for you at all. And I understand the logic of don't pull it down too low, but that, I guess that's the luxury of the way that we live. But so many people are living with a number that they think is okay and is absolutely horrible for their heart and, for their brain.
Well, and let's talk about that number because, it's okay, Carl and Richard have a couple people on that fit this pattern, but, how many people really fit this pattern, this TOFI pattern? And I don't have the answer to that, but I will post a link to a study that was done by this doctor, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but according to them who scanned some women, as many as 45% of those with average body weight had excessive levels of internal fat. And among men, the percentage was nearly 60%. Wow. So I don't know if that's indicative of the rest of the world, but in this particular study, that's what happened.
I think with men, you see that a lot. You see them from the back, they're tall, they're thin, they turn to the side, and there's that belly, and it's not a big jiggly belly, it's kind of like almost hard, and that, that's all visceral fat. So they're they're TOFIs. I mean, they're skinny people with all their fat in the last place that you want it.
Which is around your liver, around your kidneys.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you wear a certain size jean, even if it's down below your belly, you go, oh, I'm doing good. I'm healthy, and as a guy, we don't go to the doctor as much as we probably should. So you think you're all right. You go to the doctor and say, give me the workup, and you find out you're not good at all. And like you said, Carl, I think there's a lot more people that are like that than either know or even want to realize,
When I finally decided to do something about the diabetes that did involve adding more medication,
Sure.
I changed the way I eat back in March 1st of 2014. And I went on a very strict paleo way of eating. My blood sugars dropped instantly. I came completely off one diabetic medication.
Nice.
Another medication I cut in half. And I was doing very well with that. And so I did paleo and pretty strict paleo for a little over 2.5 years. But weight started creeping up a little bit. The blood sugar numbers started creeping up again. And so I started keto August of this past year. And from the end of June, my HbA1c was 6.0. And to the end of January, with those many months of keto, it was down to 5.3.
Wow.
So even though
awesome,
clean eating so much and changed so much, another huge factor came in when I started doing keto.
Yeah.
And I don't take medication for diabetes. I'm not on any diabetic medications right now. I do take a supplement, berberine, which has some similar effects of metformin, but I don't do medication, and I'm at 5.3. So keto has been a huge piece in changing that.
Yeah.
I think the critical thing is, as diabetics, we're not very good at stopping high glucose. And so if we don't eat any of the stuff, we allow our liver to make what it needs on demand. It's very good at keeping the right amount happening. So I think that's it. That's the difference between keto and a paleo diet. A paleo diet is probably veering you towards better nutrition. A ketogenic diet is forcing your liver to look after things and to take responsibility for your glucose. And that's really where things get dialed in. And I talk a lot to paleo people about it. And when I talk about diabetes treatment using a paleo diet, I generally suggest to people go towards the lower carb end of that. And if you can, ketogenic paleo is ideal. Ketogenic paleo is the best of both worlds, really.
Right. Which is essentially just ketogenic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Paleo's philosophical. Keto is physiological. Is that right? And they're both good, but I think, I have paleo friends, and it's more about, just the way the animal or the plant is sustained and the damage to the earth. And that does lead you to a healthier eating regimen, I would think.
Sure.
But it's not enough for us. We've got a issue with our body that needs fixed that doesn't care about how the cow was raised. It wants you to eat better so that it can fix itself.
When I think about the common mistakes that people embarking on a low-carb diet make, I think probably the biggest mistake is they think they can just cut back on carbohydrates, cut back on sugar, and maybe eat a couple of peaches or an orange or some orange juice, and maybe that's it, and don't eat the sweet stuff and the bread and all that stuff. And while that's good, it still doesn't hit that magic number of, 50 grams of carbohydrates a day or lower. And you can see even when Tom Naughton, when he did Fathead, he limited himself to, it was higher. It was like 150, 200 grams of carbohydrates a day. And he still lost weight over 30 days. But so while that is true, and you will probably start to reverse your symptoms, having glucose higher all the time means you're going to be hungrier all the time, means you're going to be more prone to eat foods that are going to knock you out of it. So that is why I think it's harder to half-ass keto than it is to jump in full bore. Because when you jump in, you have a few days of what's going on here? Where's my bread? But after that, you sort of don't miss it, and you really begin to feel better, and your body starts working for you again. So and it's easier. It gets easier and easier, as we've said. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, that you have to reach that tipping point, and once you do, like you said, your cravings go down. I mean, your inflammation goes down, your sleep gets better, which works absolute wonders for for pretty much all of your bodily functions, to get your circadian rhythm working and all that. And yeah, if you do both, you go, I'm kind of low carb, but I'm also eating high fat. In my perspective, you're still too close to the standard American diet that got you where you were. You gotta go all in.
And it's easier.
Oh, it really is so easy. Like you mentioned the fruit thing, Carl. That's the one thing. Like when I talk to people, even if they say pasta and bread, and you go, whatever. But they say, what about fruit? And you go, nah, no fruit. And they look at you like you have two heads, and you're like, I'm just fine. And don't get me wrong. If I could sit down with a big bowl of strawberries and destroy them, I'd be awesome. But like I never liked bananas and all that stuff. But I do miss strawberries. But I can have some when I want them, when they're in season, and I get them, and or a couple berries. So I can't eat them every day, but I don't feel any loss for that. But yeah, people look at the minutia instead of looking at the bigger picture of I'm healthy, I'm happy. I guess toes are even better than strawberries.
Well, if you're just trying to cut back on carbs, so maybe it's 100. 50 is you don't reach that point where your hunger decreases and your cravings. So you still want more. You still need to eat frequently. So you miss out on that benefit that doing it kind of full bore really provides.
Amen.
Yeah.
So, guys, it's been great to have you on. And this is an issue that we've talked about on the show, but we never really had any TOFIs on. So I think you guys are blazing a trail, at least for us.
Glad to help. We'll be on the ketogenic forums. So come there.
You guys are both admins as well.
Yeah,
so, and Matt's the mystery moderator that nobody knows about.
Right.
I'll make a post, and if anybody else wants to speak to it, or if we have people that you want to drag friends in and say, come talk to other skinny people, we'll be there. We're here to help. I think there's a lot more of us than people understand. So thank you guys for doing this. It's been very enlightening and helpful, and I hope we help some people.
You're welcome. And thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
All right, guys, you can take us out with the next segment we call
Recipes.
Gingivitis.
That was awesome.
All right, Richard, you got something?
Yeah, I've got a great recipe. It's chocolate heart. Now, the way this recipe came about, we were talking to Nina Teicholz, and she mentioned that we should try and eat more offal because offal is generally highly nutritious. And of course, I'm a notorious liver dodger. I can't stand this stuff. So I've tried having marrow, and I've had sweetbreads, which is the pancreas of a sheep, I think,
or the thalamus gland, isn't it?
It could be a thalamus, or
might be both.
It's one of the glands. Yeah, it could
it's
be
a
both.
Gland.
It's a gland. It might be the adrenals, actually. But anyway,
Right.
So everybody who's been in the ketogenic forums knows that Brenda is a lover of heart.
Right.
And she likes hers almost rare. And I'm a little bit squeamish about that. So what I did was I determined that I was going to try and cook some heart. Because one of my friends had cooked it once at a dinner party, and I quite enjoyed it. So I put a question out to our ketogenic forums. I need a recipe. I need a recipe for beef hearts, and I got a couple of suggestions. But I've been wanting to use my sous vide, and somebody gave me a suggestion. Adam Hagen gave me a suggestion in the ketogenic forums to use a sous vide machine to make beef heart. And he said, I sous vide mine a couple of months back. I rubbed the heart with cumin, oregano, chili powder, salt, onion powder, and garlic powder. Let it dry brine for 24 hours in the fridge. Then put it in a vacuum bag with some fresh thyme and some tallow from the renderings from the same cow. And set the circulator up and set the time and temperature to 24 hours at 145 Fahrenheit. Once it was cooled, I sliced it and ate it cold with adding it to broth. Now, I modified this recipe slightly because it turned out I actually cooked this recipe on Valentine's Day. And
isn't that nice?
So we decided that it's traditional, obviously, to give chocolate on Valentine's Day. And heart is a cut of meat that works particularly well with hunter spices like cumin, but also like juniper or caraway or chocolate.
Fragrant spices.
Yeah, exactly. Fragrant spices. So I used 2 tablespoons of cacao powder. I used a teaspoon of caraway seed and a teaspoon of juniper seed or juniper berries, and I used a teaspoon of cumin seed. I dry brined, so I basically did a dry rub. I got the heart and I removed the pericardium, which is like the heartstrings inside the heart that sort of holds it together. So I used a knife just to remove those and then rubbed it in this mixture of spices and put it on a plate in the fridge for 24 hours just to dry brine it, and then put it in the sous vide bag. And I used duck fat.
Nice.
I know that Adam suggested use the tallow, but if I was going to confit this, I wanted to confit it in duck fat, which is delicious. So I sous vide this for 24 hours, and I took the heart out and sliced it very, very finely, and then took the juices from the bag, which is the duck fat, the heart juices, and all of the spices, including the chocolate, put it in a pan and reduced it by half, and then whisked in a little cream, and that made basically a nice chocolate-flavored sauce. And but it was more like a mole chocolate, not
a savory chocolate.
Yeah, it's a savory chocolate sauce. And so that was my recipe. It was chocolate hearts for Valentine's Day. It was delicious, and I've got a picture of it on our Boring Keto section on the ketogenic forums.
That's great.
So that's my recipe.
Awesome.
What have you got, Carl?
Well, I got what I made last night.
What, a cup of macadamias?
Yeah, a cup of macadamias. Okay, we're done.
We're done.
No, I made a cowboy ribeye last night, but it's wintertime here and my grill isn't actually accessible. It's buried under about 3 feet of snow right now. So, so I went for the broiling method, and this method works great, but it's different than you might think of. Here's what you do. It's all in the rub, and I am also using salt, garlic powder, onion powder, and cumin seed, but also crushed peppercorns. And so this is sort of an au poivre treatment. And au poivre just means that, you coat that thing in crushed peppercorns and then, fry it highly. So here's what you need. You need about 3 tablespoons of coarse salt. I use kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of cumin seed, 1 tablespoon garlic powder, 1 tablespoon onion powder. If you want to use fresher things, that's okay too. But the powder works fine because it sort of just, it doesn't burn. 3 tablespoons of crushed peppercorns. Now, when I say crushed, I guess you could take your pepper grinder and crush pepper, but really what you can do is get a mortar and pestle, or put them in a blender, or what do you guys call it, the magic bullet? You want to break them open, but you want big chunks of these peppercorns.
I've got a big granite mortar and pestle for precisely this purpose.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So that's what I use, but you can use a hammer. If you have a hammer, you can put the peppercorns in a Ziploc bag and just whack them with a hammer.
Yeah. And a brick. A hammer and a
brick works. Stone. Let's go caveman here.
Yeah.
Thad mix steak. Boom, boom, boom. So now what you do is you pat your steak, and I get a bone-in ribeye that's about 22 to 24 ounces with the bone in. Big, thick, maybe 1.5 inches thick.
It's tastiest around the bone, isn't it?
Yep. Absolutely, yeah. Gnawing the meat that's around the bone is the absolute best in the world, even though it looks barbaric. But, hey, come on, get over it. So you take all this stuff, you mix it up, and apply it liberally to all sides of your ribeye. And then take a cast iron skillet, I got these new Lodge cast irons that are only about a foot round.
Yeah.
And they only have a little lip on the edge. And Terry's nodding her head. You must have these too, Terry. Yeah, I got them at Walmart for like $12 or something each. It was easy. So these are perfect for this thing. But if you don't have that, just get a cast iron pan. Put it on the burner on high. And when I say high, I mean high heat. No oil, no butter, no nothing. Just sear it for about 4 minutes on each side. Okay. You take that and you put it right into a 375 degree Fahrenheit oven and stick a meat thermometer in there. Halfway through, which is only going to take about 4 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe 6, you flip it, right? You flip it so that you get it cooking up from the bottom. And when that sucker reaches 120 degrees Fahrenheit inside, take it out. Take it off the pan. Don't let it rest on the pan. Otherwise, it's going to continue to cook. Yeah. And Matt's nodding his head. You're a meat guy, Matt. I know you are. And you too, Terry. You take it off. You let it just rest. And let it rest for at least 5 minutes so the juices won't just spill out when you cut into it.
I like a wooden chopping board for that kind of thing. It's
Me
perfect.
too. Yeah. Exactly what I do. And let me tell you something, kids. This is Ruth's Chris. Has nothing on this. I mean, this is essentially the best ribeye I've ever had.
Nice.
Wow. Crusty, peppery. Oh, yeah. And I put 2 tablespoons of butter on it because, I'm trying to eat 5,000 calories a day.
True.
And that's a couple hundred extra.
I'm going to jump in on your recipe, Carl, but I think the big thing, people, when you said you put it there for 4 minutes, put it there. And leave it there. Your intuition is to move it. You're going to hear all the sizzling and everything. That's your Maillard reaction. That's your business.
That's what you want.
Leave it there and trust Carl because the crust that you get, if you move it around, it's almost going to steam.
Yep,
just
you're right.
Leave it there and it's so amazing. It's so good.
So good. All right. That's what I got. And that's a show. Again, Matt, thank you. Terry, thank you. Yeah. It's been great to have you.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for making me a part of this family and keeping me healthy. And I look forward to seeing everybody over at the forums.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you so much.
Of course, if you have anything that you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something you don't agree with, or some more research that you found to support or refute anything we've said, send it by email to dudes@twoketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter at 2KetoDudes, on Instagram at 2KetoDudes. And of course, if you want to join our forum, it's free and easy. It's at www.ketogenicforums.com or forum.2keto.com. And if useless swag is your fancy, T-shirts, coffee mugs, and other junk with witty keto sayings on them, head over to gear.2keto.com.
And if you feel like supporting our podcast and our forums, hit the donate button on our website at www.2ketodudes.com.
Or just go to donate.2keto.com for a shortcut. Well, keep calm and keto on, Richard.
Yeah, keep calm and keto on, Carl.
All right. And we'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.